Hello everybody, my name is Jeremy and welcome back to the Kanto region here in scenic Pallet Town, the beginning of our journey, the first town that you encounter in the Pokemon video game, the first town that we see in the Pokemon television series. Hello, welcome to the episode. Thank you for joining me. It's another beautiful Friday here in the Kanto region, and the beginning of this episode is it's kind of a lot of just wrapping stuff up. There's a lot of areas of the city where I wanted to go back and add a little bit of detail. There's a lot of places like the one we just saw where a detail I had done initially was wrong. I had originally made those breakwaters with the absolute classic Strict Toaster breakwater rocks asset, which I don't think anybody actually pointed this out to me, which I'm a little surprised at, but those are not actually correct. Anywhere in Japan with breakwaters, they would likely be using tetrapods, like I just added onto the beach. As you just saw, there's like cute little tetrapod characters who I added all over the place. And basically what you're seeing here is me kind of going back through a lot of areas that I already built with a bunch of details that I either forgot to add or didn't have the assets for just yet, or just kind of missed. This is something, for example, what I'm doing right now, I'm adding a lot of kind of just buoys and nets in piles all over the place, which it's actually something that you see a great deal around Google Earth in these fishing villages that I've been looking at for inspiration. It seems kind of crazy, but it actually is just something you see. And over here, adding a bunch of billboards in different places around the city. Basically, what I'm doing here is sitting on my prop list on the Find It mod, and every single thing I look at and I decide, can that go somewhere? And if so, where? Because this is just wrapping it up now. We're just finishing up Pallet Town. Feels crazy to say, but we actually did it in 6 episodes, which is only 1 more than I wanted. I was hoping for 5, unfortunately. It's 6, not too bad. This one is kind of straddling the line a little bit between Pallet and Viridian City. We're going to be making our way up the highway towards Viridian City, so, you know, it's not too bad. I don't feel too bad about overshooting my estimate. However, it is a little bit concerning for how long some of the bigger cities are going to take. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with those, whether I have the energy for it, whether we have the longevity for it. You know, maybe by the time I finish all of these projects, you know, Cities Skylines 2 is going to be a good game that we all want to play, and we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. You know, like I had said in the first episode of the series, kind of the idea of doing this is it you know, you do it in these kind of bite-sized chunks where it feels okay to just be done. So, you know, if we don't make it further than Viridian City after this, then what the hey? You know, we did a fun little area. We did a city with a suburb, and that's just that. So anyway, and another thing that you're seeing here in this kind of like final detailing process is kind of just an interesting part of my process for this project in general, which is kind of based on necessity, which is to say that I do not speak Japanese. I don't understand Japanese at all. And, you know, something that you encounter a lot on the Steam workshop for this game is that Japanese asset creators don't care whether or not you, as an English speaker, can understand what's going on with their assets. A lot of them are just written in Japanese. They're not intended for us gaijin. You know, they're for Japanese people and people who understand Japanese, and that's just that. So a lot of times I'll just sit here, pull up an asset that I want to use, and I'll actually pull up the Google Translate app on my phone, and I'll just hold it up to the screen and just look at what the thing actually says or what the name of the asset is, and then decide from there where it should go and what it should be. It's an interesting process. It's one I've never done before. Speaking of things I've never done before and things I don't understand at all, now we are working on a substation, which I had kind of referenced briefly in, I believe, episode 2 of this series. I had mentioned a workshop comment calling this Godzilla bait, and well, you know, before we leave Pallet Town, it's something that we're going to need to address, which is, of course, where the electricity comes from. So we built a little substation out here in the sticks, as it were, and then we're going to have some big, you know, huge high voltage wires kind of making their way out towards Viridian City. It actually is neatly addressed in the Pokemon video game, and I imagine in the anime as well. I don't necessarily remember whether it comes up or what, but in the video game there is a power plant. There is a place where the electricity definitively comes from for the Kanto region, so that's pretty neat. It's going to be a while before we get there. It's kind of all the way over on the furthest east section of the map, but you know, it's there at least. We know what we're working towards. So all these areas, I think, are just going to have, you know, substations around that eventually will all connect to some sort of a big, I'm going to say probably nuclear power plant. I think that's probably going to be the most interesting and probably also the most feasible for the actual lore side of this, to make it actually make sense that it powers all of these, you know, cities and towns equally. Over here, we're on the other side of the highway now. We're outside of Pallet Town, and we're starting to work our way downriver towards Viridian City. This is something that I had also kind of started on in episode 2, and I had discussed eventually doing. You know, we're on the other side of this sluice gate, and we are, you know, just trying to make it make some sense that the water kind of flows peacefully through this gate from one side of the river to the other. I assume this is what they're for. I never actually ended up researching it after I talked about it, but I assume I'm right about this, which is they are mostly for regulating, you know, the intake of the river on the ocean side of it, right? It's keeping it from getting too overwhelmed by like a tsunami or just like a general, you know, high tide or whatever. So I figure, you know, on the other side of this sluice gate, after we kind of get through the gate, the rest of this is going to be relatively natural looking, which you see me actually working on here in perfect timing, as if I had planned it. We have these very nice looking riverbed decals by Ronix, I believe, and this is one that I've never used before. I have never actually detailed a river like this. I've only ever done kind of like big industrial looking rivers, or big, you know, kind of city rivers where, you know, they're keyed off and they're all cemented and what have you. I never actually did like a natural looking river with like a muddy bed and all that. I actually think it came out looking really nice in the end. You'll see kind of a little bit later and in the cinematics and stuff. I think the ultimate result of this is super cool. I'm pretty proud of myself with this one. This is maybe not as cool, the electrical situation. I'm not going to pretend to be an engineer. I'm not going to pretend that I know what I'm doing out here, but I'm trying my best. Here you see me doing a familiar trick. I've done this a bunch, where I use procedural objects mod to kind of change the shape of these rice fields. I'm getting a lot better at it, as you can see. I'm kind of scaling them as I go, so moving kind of these lines along with the curves that I'm creating to kind of keep the texture of it at least a little bit more in line. I think it ends up looking really nice. This section is probably my favorite bit of farm field that I have in the project so far. And this is an interesting section over here, because I'm kind of like, I'm really at a loss for what happens in rural parts of really anywhere. I mean, I am a city boy. I've never lived in the country. I've barely been to the country. I don't really know a lot about, how farms work, or like, where all this stuff is supposed to be, how they're supposed to come together. But basically my structural understanding of these farms is that there's a house, there's a couple of barns, there's a couple of greenhouses, and then there's a bunch of fields. And that's how I'm putting these together. I don't know if that's necessarily the most realistic way to do it. Here you see me, by the way. I didn't mention this before, I don't believe, but there's these huge decals that are on the workshop that were, they're supposed to be like geographic details. There's a bunch of them that look like, mountains and like ocean floor and stuff like that. And there's one of them that I just love that I keep using. That's just a big green square. And folks, this is a bit of a tip from me, a pro gamer move that I do, which is you take the big green square, you put it under your trees, and then look at that, you don't need as many trees anymore because it looks much denser from afar when you look at it. It's a nice deep green. You see a little bit of the motion of the trees. If you look at it too close, it does not look very great. But if you look at it from afar, it looks like a nice dense forest, and you saved yourself on the tree count. You saved yourself on your FPS. You're not killing yourself going crazy trying to fill out all these forested areas with super dense trees. Anyway, so over here, I'm working on these little farm areas, and I'm trying to take inspiration from a lot of places, really, but specifically kind of like nostalgic and romantic visions of the Japanese countryside. I tried to find a lot of places where, where Japanese people kind of romanticize the idea of the farm life. And so one of those places that I found was the PlayStation 1 video game, Boku no Natsuyasume, which is about a little boy's summer vacation in the countryside. I, of course, have never played it because, as I said earlier, I don't speak Japanese, and that game has never been translated into English. However, I have watched a lot of Let's Plays. I've watched reviews of it. I've seen all the footage of it. I've seen what the countryside is depicted as in that game. And one of the most prevalent images are these kind of like big sunflower fields. So I added a few of those as a sort of a nod to that. Similarly, the way that this riverbed sits here right next to these big rice farms, I was taking a lot of inspiration from the classic Miyazaki film My Neighbor Totoro, which I watched with my son during the process of making this episode. And similarly, just a very romantic view of country life. Maybe not exactly, I was going to say not exactly realistic. You got that right, buddy. There aren't a lot of, big fluffy bunny cat monsters in the Japanese countryside. But I also was going to say, just in general, like it's much more of a romanticized view of that lifestyle than perhaps it's actually like. You do see a bit of hard work kind of around that family, but they're mostly just kind of bourgeois city folk coming and kind of like living a relaxing lifestyle in the country. Anyway, just kind of extending a lot of the same details downriver as we go. These little rocks in the bottom, some little plants around them. It really goes a long way with not a whole lot of work to just kind of throw a few things under the water. They're just like very perfectly obscured by the water texture so that they, you put a random rotation on them and they look just different enough is kind of how I feel about it. It's something that I've always really appreciated in this game. Once you get it right, it does take a little bit to get it right. However, once you do, it really pays dividends to do a little bit of detailing underwater. And kind of just doing a lot of the same trees along this river edge here. I have these, I think they're called like cypress. They're like riverside cypresses or something like that. I think they're actually an Australian tree. But we're really missing a lot of native Japanese trees. I've mentioned this before, and people have pointed me in the direction of some assets. And I gotta say, maybe I'm just too spoiled by Mr. Mason trees and Padelmo trees and all these specific tree creators that we have in the community. But I don't know. None of the Japanese ones are really quite up to snuff as far as I'm concerned. And I apologize if you're one of those tree creators and you're listening to this. I don't mean to besmirch you and your very hard work, obviously, but I don't know. I'm not using them. They're not up to my standard, unfortunately. Over here, we're back at the riverside, doing some pretty familiar detailing of these rice fields. I think over here especially, I had already said that, these rice fields in this episode are some of my favorite that I've ever done. This area specifically, where we're kind of like hugging the side of the river, we have like a couple of different curves and shapes that these fields interact with. We have the road, we have the side of this hill, and we have the river. All three of them kind of colliding together to create this really unique and nice little shape here. I think it just looks fantastic. I'm really, really happy with it. And I keep using these fluffy grass assets, which are, I believe they are Mr. Mason, actually. And I put them in between these rice fields. I know in real life, these should be like little canals and trenches and stuff in between them to make them floodable and what have you for harvesting and growing and all that. I don't understand how that stuff works, the irrigation systems and stuff. I'm not going to pretend that I do. I just do what I think looks nice, and I think these look really nice with the fluffy grass next to them. And that's just that. This is a cool thing that I found. I was always looking for good greenhouse assets, and it looks like in my absence in the past year, somebody finally went and made some pretty good ones. I really like the way those look. They're maybe a little too ornate for the setting, but I think they're really nice looking all the same, and there's not a whole lot of great looking greenhouses on the workshop to begin with. So, you take what you get, and I think these are looking super, super nice. I know I had just talked about all the Japanese foliage that I don't think looks very good, and then I just used all this specific Japanese foliage here, and I do think this house actually does come out looking good. I'm really more talking about trees than anything else. The black pine tree doesn't look so hot in the workshop. Nothing Japanese in terms of like big evergreen trees is looking that great. You get a couple good ones from Mr. Mason, but that's about it. This is pretty much the end of the episode now. We got a couple little things to do, but this is one of the last things is a rock shed for keeping big avalanches of rocks from falling down from the top of this hill, this mountain, onto this road. I don't think that I necessarily am getting it right in terms of like how these things are supposed to function, where they're supposed to be, but I think they look cool, and I kind of tend to put them on these corners and these turns where there's a big hill next to them. So if you know more about it, please let me know. I definitely am open to the idea that I'm not doing it right. And that's going to just about wrap it up for the time lapse. We're going to get into the cinematics pretty soon here, so I'm going to get started pretty early on this. Thank you so much for watching my show. Thank you for joining me on my channel. This has been a real blast, and we're finishing Pallet Town, so it kind of feels like a good time to be a little bit retrospective. I'm really floored by the response to this project. I'm really happy that people are enjoying it. I'm really happy that a lot of people are coming back to the channel. It's been a while for me, and it's bringing a lot of joy to my days. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. My name is Jeremy. You can find me on Twitter at @JeremyThunder. You can check out my podcast. It's called Generation Loss. It's about movies. You can find it wherever you find your podcasts of choice. If you like what I'm doing here, if you want to support me further, you can become a channel member. You can donate a little bit of money to me at my Buy Me a Coffee link that's in the description of every episode. And if you become a channel member, you get early access to episodes before they come out to the general public. I'm hoping that by the time you're listening to this, there are more early access episodes available to you. You can see the building of Viridian City if you're so lucky. So thank you so much. That's $5 a month for channel membership. Join me there. Join me on the Discord. We have Discord. It's in the description as well. Thank you so much for being here. Hope you enjoy your weekend, and I will see you in the next one.